We need to dive. It's a little early to do some diving, but I misread my alarm clock and got up at 5 as opposed to 6 this morning. But it's still time, I think, to dive into. And I've got some writing to do today. I've got about 2,000 words to write today for a deadline. So the extra hour will come in useful. So let's dive into this labyrinthine tale of Benhabib, a man as polarising as the Brexit process itself in some ways. His resignation yesterday from UKIP, as Andrea Jenkins walked in one way, he walked out the other, is the latest chapter in a saga rife with ideological clashes, political machinations, and, dare I say, moments of theatricality worthy of a Shakespearean subplot, not the main plot, the subplot, or something tossed off in the background of a Rattigan farce. Let's start with the interview with the unctuous Dan Wootton. Unctuous indeed. I mean, a voice more oleaginous than a fake nurse peddling poison, and yet, beneath the glibness, the content is undeniably fascinating. Wootton's interrogation brought out a side of Habib we don't often see, vulnerable yet resolute, a paradoxical blend that makes him compelling watching. Watching in these moments, one might almost say, I prefer him in subtle mode. Habib, born in Pakistan, privately educated in Britain, forged in the fires of finance, insurance, property, Habib has always been a man of contradictions. He rose to political prominence as a Brexit Party MEP, championing a hardline vision of sovereignty, and yet within the party that birthed him, his ideas set him apart. Farage, ever the populist pragmatist, viewed Brexit as done. Habib, ever the ideologue, saw it as unfinished business, and this fundamental divergence led to a fractious relationship with Farage, a man who, like a seasoned gambler, knows when to cash out, and Habib, by contrast, is the dogged player who stays at the table, committed to following through a hand even when the odds are stacked against him. Farage's dismissal of Habib yesterday, both as deputy leader and as a political ally, was swift and brutal. Poor old Ben, Farage quipped. He's gone bitter, very twisted. The champagne corks practically popped as he described Habib's departure as the icing on the cake. Such public derision might have crushed a lesser man, but Habib's response was measured, even statesmanlike. I love Nigel, he told Wootton, offering a proverbial olive branch while simultaneously critiquing the party's lack of democracy. And here lies the crux of the matter. Habib's vision of Reform UK as a democratic entity, free from Farage's unilateral control, clashed irreparably with Farage's cult of personality. Farage, always the showman, dismissed Habib's concerns about party governance and ideological purity as irrelevant distractions. For Habib, however, these were existential issues, rather like disliking being dismissed as those people, the people who followed Tommy Robinson and formed the bulwark of Reform's vote and came out on the streets of London. I'm not endorsing Reform, please don't get me wrong, but in terms of the personalities involved, Habib is a person worthy of mention. He's a person of merit. Farage is the showman who walks away when he doesn't get his way. Habib's grievances extended beyond the way the party worked. He's openly criticised the party's pivot towards recruiting disillusioned Conservatives, describing this obsession as a betrayal of Reform's foundational ethos. Why would you want to open the party up wholesale to Tories? He asked, clearly exasperated. His criticism of Farage's apathy towards issues like Northern Ireland and mass immigration underscores the ideological gulf between them. In one particularly charged moment, Habib condemned Richard Tice's dismissal of Tony Robinson's supporters, that lot. While many saw this as a sensible distancing from extremism, Habib views it as a betrayal of loyal voters. It's a pragmatic decision at odds with his most absolutist approach to political integrity. You know, I admire that. and you abandon your integrity, maybe in an attempt to claw your way up the greasy pole of political success. But at what price? At what price? The interview with Wotton was a masterclass in political self-defence. And of course, Habib comes out brilliantly. Habib deftly navigates accusations of bitterness and ambition, insisting his departure was about principles, not personality. I'm not in politics for private advancement, he said, framing himself as the reluctant warrior for a country in existential crisis. Whether one agrees with him or not, there's no denying the conviction with which he speaks. The Wooden interview also highlights Habib's frustration with Farage's strategic retreat from ideological battles. For example, the Sky News meltdown over James McMurdoch's vetting, which Wooden plays at the end of the interview, and Habib says he's never seen it before. And Habib calls it seasoned political response, while subtly implying that it was an act of desperation because Farage had put himself into a corner by saying that James McMurdoch had not been vetted, and leaves open the next question, which Sky, of course, were pursuing, that if he had been in charge, would he have rejected James McMurdoch's candidacy? So what now for Benhabib? He's not ruled out a return to Reform UK, should it democratise. It said it's going to, but it still remains, strictly speaking, a limited company in the hands of Nigel Farage. And he points out, should Nigel change his mind, should Nigel fall under a bus, there is no Reform UK. And he's right from that point of view. Nor has he dismissed the possibility of creating his own political vehicle. I can't imagine what the purpose of that would be, but what is clear is that he remains committed to his vision of Britain's sovereignty and democracy, even if that means going it alone. As Wotton's poll at the end revealed, Habib enjoys significant following among Reform's base, despite his departure, and this popularity underscores a broader truth that while Habib's politics may be divisive, his authenticity, his intellectual rigour command respect. And in the political theatre of Reform UK, Farage is, of course, the star performer, the cloud pleaser who knows how to steal the show. Habib, by contrast, is the conscientious playwright, toiling behind the scenes to ensure the story holds together. And the clash might have been inevitable, a collision of pragmatism and principle, but those two characters are essential in any political dynamic. It's interesting that the hard worker has been jettisoned here, just as the hard workers are jettisoned in the Conservative Party and in the Labour Party. It's as if all you want to see is the razzmatazz, but the razzmatazz doesn't really do the thinking, as we discover again and again and again. And when the razzmatazz is imposed on a thinker, like, for example, Rishi Sunak, and Rishi Sunak is given words to say which aren't his, it's a pathetic display of nonsense. And I must admit, I don't like Benhabib's politics, but I like the man. I warm to him. Thoughtful, committed, unafraid to challenge even his closest allies, or at least their ideas, and then dismissed with an ad hominem attack and told he's bitter and throwing his toys out of the pram and all that sort of stuff. Believe me, I've heard it all before from Farage. Farage has got this trick, well honed. He does it very well, and he does it with an air of conviction, but he's done it slightly too often for it to continue to work. Anybody who disagrees with Farage is disagreeing with the entire system. Well, so what? Benhabib embodies the complexity of modern politics. He might even embody the complexity of modern populism, because he is a populist. And whether he returns to reform or carves out a new path, one thing is certain: Benhabib, I think, is far from finished in the political theatre.